You everyone for taking time to join us today. I know you all have busy schedules, and as some of you may or may not be aware, this is actually part of a series of webinars that we'll be conducting this year as we expand some of our communications in the form of webinars with our customers and clients. Already, we actually supported an energy resilience webinar. In fact, we did it twice, just around Easter. And today, our focus is on waste and steps to consider when we think about shifting from a compliance mindset to a more circular transition. Just to provide you a bit of context, let me just quickly explain our continued partnership with Anthesis. It's a partnership that actually began in 2024, and it does continue today. And what we've done really is we've combined that on-the-ground workplace FM expertise within ISS and combine that with global sustainability advisory from Anthesis to create a partnership which we believe is both unique, but also truly built for delivery in that estate environment. And it is actually from ISS and Anthesis that we have our two lovely speakers and my esteemed colleagues today. Is subject matter experts in everything that covers waste and circularity. Neil Glover is a waste and circularity leader within the FM industry with over 30 years of experience. He's currently head of circularity and resources with the ISS sustainability team. And with us as well is Sarah Griffiths, who is the associate director in circularity and value chain transformation from our partner Anthesis. And she has over 15 years experience in resource management and circular economy strategy. And speaking of Sarah, I'm actually going to hand you over to her now. She'll just going to talk a little bit more about why we are here. Over to you, Sarah.
Thanks so much, Michael, and thanks everyone for joining us. Yeah, if you could just click through to the next slide, Michael, that'd be great. So why we're here. As regulatory pressure is intensifying, waste costs are rising, and circularity is becoming a critical lever for Scope 3 reduction, waste is becoming a more strategic environmental priority for many businesses. So throughout this webinar, we hope to provide you with practical strategies for your own organisation to prepare for a circular zero waste future. We'll examine the fast-evolving policy landscape, demystify what zero waste really means, and share steps for reducing waste and engaging your workforce and tracking progress with confidence. We'll also look at how to move beyond recycling to circularity with some project examples to show you what other organisations are doing in this space. Next slide, please, Michael. So to provide the context and the framing for the session, I wanted to share a couple of quotes which highlight the importance of circularity as a driver of the climate transition. And this first one is a statement from the World Building Council for Sustainable Development, which indicates that a major reason that global emissions are not falling fast enough is that material consumption continues to grow. So even as renewable energy deployment accelerates, the volume of materials used for construction, infrastructure, consumer goods, and energy systems keeps increasing. And this means that upstream impacts, so mining, manufacturing, continue to rise, offsetting the gains from cleaner energy. Next slide, please, Michael. So this second statistic is from the International Resource Panel, and it highlights that most environmental impacts come not from final consumption, but the upstream extraction and processing of materials, implying that climate policy must address material systems, not just energy generation. And that circular economy strategies, so reuse, recycling, material efficiency, for example, can significantly reduce emissions. So we really need to drive a reduction in the need for virgin material through the circular economy. Next slide, please, Michael. So again, in the spirit of context setting, we've added this graph here to show that the recycling rate across the UK has really plateaued for the past 5 years at around 44%. And this is for UK households, and we'll come to obviously to focus on businesses throughout the course of the session. But what this shows us is that across the UK, 56% of everything that we throw away is going to landfill and incineration. And obviously we want to make the shift to recycling recovery being a much higher number. So you might note the orange bars here. So this is Wales with a higher recycling rate at 57%. So they are better than us at the moment. And this is mainly due to a consistent policy approach, a long-term policy approach, including legal recycling targets and financial penalties for local authorities. And they've also had something similar to simpler recycling that we've had rolled out across England this year, which has meant that they've had standardised collection systems across the country, which has really reduced confusion and made the system easier for residents to understand. So just wanted to highlight why the orange bars were higher there. So bringing it back to the business world, business waste disposal costs are rising. This is due to tax increases, regulatory changes, and higher operational costs. And Neil will talk about the regulatory drivers shortly and also break down the waste costs and savings later on. But we do know that businesses can save 10 to 30% of waste costs through improved segregation and diverting materials to either recycling or reuse. And that waste baselining and that data is really important to help identify where these savings can be made and how you can enhance recycling. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm handing over to Neil at this stage to explain the policy landscape. Over to you, Neil.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Right, so yeah, I'm going to take you a few minutes now just to take you through several of the more relevant policy changes that are about to hit the UK. It's fair to say UK legislation is currently undergoing a massive shift. The key changes being driven by the Environmental Act of 2021, brought about by the stagnating recycling percentage that Sarah's just mentioned and the UK net zero ambitions. From our industry point of view, this commenced with the Waste and Resources Strategy back in 2018 and incorporated measures to reduce waste, increase recycling, introduce key changes as part of the polluter pays principle, and to encourage sustainable product design supporting a transition to the circular economy. So first of all, the first one I'm going to mention is simpler recycling in Wales and England. Businesses in Wales, they sort of transitioned across in April 2024. And obviously in England, it was last April in 2025. And hopefully by now, from a domestic household point of view, simpler recycling would have commenced in England a couple of months ago. What we do know, sort of further developments in this space are the inclusion of plastic films from next April 2027. And also the EA have just announced that they're going to start enforcement for businesses that so far have failed to implement simpler recycling. Then moving on to the emissions trading scheme. So this is further afield in 2028. Now, potentially this could impact, this has a big uplift in the residual waste stream costs. So that's one of the reasons why we're here today to talk about how we do that. So in the same way that landfill tax was impacted, and last year we saw that landfill tax went up by over 20%. The same is likely to happen for residual waste being incinerated when this emissions trading scheme comes in. It will be seen as the ultimate penalty for not preventing waste, or at the very least recycle more. Next one is the launch of the UK circular economy. This was called the Circular Economy Strategy. It's now called the Circular Economy Growth Plan. This was due to be launched at the back end of last year, but unfortunately, it has been delayed. The latest thinking is that this will be to the autumn of 2026. However, there has been a task force that have been working on this for the last 2 years with DEFRA. And they've prioritised 6 areas of the industry. So these are textiles, transport, construction, agriculture, food, chemicals and plastics. So yeah, we're eagerly awaiting the announcement of what the growth plan actually looks like, because the announcement will boost and create new jobs associated to circularity businesses. Moving on to EPR, so the overarching trend in the UK waste legislation right now is a shift towards what is known as the producer pays principle and circular economy models, focusing less on what local authorities pay to dispose of waste and more on holding producers accountable for the entire life cycle cost of their products. You no doubt will have seen the transition in some of the packaging as producers try to reduce their cost under EPR. And it is widely appreciated that the EPR model will be extended in future years beyond that of just packaging, to include more complex product streams such as textiles, furniture and construction materials. Digital waste tracking. So digital waste tracking comes in officially at the end of this year, and then it expands in April of next year. But digital waste tracking will be a national digital record system for waste movements, which will replace the old paper-based waste transfer notes and hazardous waste consignment notes. So massive benefit here is that it will track who's produced the waste, who's moved it, what happened to it, giving a greater visibility of the journey of waste, which is really important. And then the deposit return scheme. So this is due to come in October 2027. It has recently just been announced in the last couple of weeks that the deposit will be 20p per container, and that will be for PET, so plastic drinks bottles, and aluminium and steel cans from 150 millilitres up to 3 litres. At the moment, because waste is a devolved activity, Wales are talking about including glass in their scheme, but we'll communicate that more when we know what's happening with it. I was on a webinar last week which was talking about the island DRS scheme. So that went live 2 years ago actually, but it was really quite interesting, and I can just share some sort of learnings with you. That what they have seen is recycling has been boosted from 49% to 91%. And they tracked an additional 800 million containers that have been captured as part of the scheme. So some really great statistics coming through in that first 2 years. And more so from a retail point of view, the message was to try and automate that as much as possible via installing sort of reverse vending machines. But where these were put in place, it was noted that they must have a good cleaning regime to make sure that they remain in good operational order. Probably not surprising that came up in that call is that in Ireland they drink a lot of Guinness, and the cans, especially the widget in the cans, was causing all sorts of problems in the early days, but I think they've got around that now. There was some fraudulent activity at the front end of rolling it out, but that was mainly due to the sort of uncrushed manual collections and people trying to capture what is a valuable product. So yeah, some interesting conversation came out of that webinar. There is some development around sort of digital DRS, which potentially will mean that the material can still be disposed of in curbside collections when we go live with it, but we're just waiting to see how that technology develops. I think it's fair to say, with what I've just gone through, there's so many moving parts, there's so much legislation that's due to hit, and we're all waiting to see how they develop and how the sort of timelines match with what I've just sort of gone through. But one thing's for sure, we'll make sure that they're communicated out and when any relevant updates are available. Next slide, please. Right. Historically, sort of contract KPIs have been primarily centered on metrics such as zero waste to landfill or to achieve a certain recycling percentage. With a majority recently have been asking for the inclusion of waste minimisation plans as part of that sort of mobilisation period. And whilst these plans are a step in the right direction, for me, they still stop short of the required models. And we've developed this table here, which sort of takes people on that journey through waste minimisation to zero waste to circularity. So I want to introduce you to the sort of primary differences between these three approaches, and Sarah will later explore the practicalities of these and how they can help you to define your own goals. So starting off with waste minimisation. Waste minimisation is a practical operational type approach aimed at using fewer materials and improving the efficiency in production and consumption. Diverting waste away from landfill, and it typically follows the traditional sort of hierarchy of waste. Zero waste then builds on this and views the purpose of waste as a design flaw, which we'll touch on a bit later. And accreditations in this area had set that a minimum of 90% of waste is diverted away from not just landfill, but also incineration. So that's a significant step up from how waste has been treated. It pushes beyond waste minimisation by emphasising product and system redesign, reuse, repair and composting, and we'll also need a bit of behavioural change to achieve that zero waste status. And then finally, the circular economy. This is a system level economic model. It's more complex and slower to implement, but it's got a longer term view. And it aims to sort of keep materials and products in use at their highest value and eliminate the concept of waste entirely. Next slide, please, Michael. So my next slide focuses on the waste minimisation and zero waste from a financial viewpoint. And we see waste minimisation as a tool to reduce the collection costs. And a good example of this comes from where we've analysed data and we've right-sized or we've optimised the operation, therefore improving the efficiency of the waste collection model, maximising weights and reducing collection vehicle emissions. Zero waste then focuses on deeper analysis, starting with baselining, really getting a full understanding of the current compositional analysis of the waste, and then identifying options to help trying to segregate that waste better, reduce contamination, and look for alternative solutions away from single-use or hard-to-recycle items. You can see on the slide in front of you the basic range of waste streams and the relevant cost per tonnes. And this clearly shows that obviously residual waste is the most expensive. So therefore, removing waste from this stream will save money. Using simpler recycling as a perfect example of this, we can see the value of removing food waste out of the residual into its own stream, saving the best part of £115 per tonne. You will also notice I've put some contamination charges in brackets. We see all too often in our baseline audits high levels of contamination, sometimes up to 50% of the waste that we're analysing. What we are currently seeing in the healthcare sector, for example, though, is a growing trend of contaminating offensive waste being rerouted to the highest cost of disposal. Therefore, if waste streams are heavily contaminated, I've indicated the potential uplift for mixed recycling, food and glass if they were designated as general waste and the entire load incinerated, which is not where we want to be, of course. So yeah, both of these examples that I've just taken you through are still focusing on the word waste. And imagine a world where we don't produce waste. My favourite Sir David Attenborough quote is, "Don't waste electricity, don't waste paper, don't waste food. Live the way you want to live, but just don't waste." I'll now hand you over to Sarah that will take us to delve deeper into the circular economy.
Thanks, Neil. So as Neil has already alluded to, circularity refers to strategies such as using fewer materials, keeping products in use longer, repairing, remanufacturing and recycling. And these approaches reduce the need for new extraction and processing of materials, which are the most damaging stages of the value chain. So ultimately, circularity is about redefining the way we value materials through design and enhanced recovery at end of first use. So you will likely have seen several different versions of circular economy diagrams. This is the one that ISS used to govern their approach to resource management. So we have the 10 R's around the outside. And within this cycle, the most opportunity for impact is in the prevention zone, where we have the opportunity to design out waste, design products for reuse or recyclability, consider sustainable procurement, for example. And at Anthesis, we do a lot of work in this zone with product manufacturers looking at circular business models. And this thinking helps us to move from a linear model, which is a take, make, waste approach, which is a major driver of the triple planetary crisis, and move to a circular system. And research shows us that existing waste management hierarchies are no longer adequate for achieving sustainable and net zero targets. Instead, we need to move to circular economy models to replace them and reduce resource use and achieve environmental impact at scale. Next slide, please, Michael. So in terms of defining zero waste, we need to think about it. It's sort of a term that organisations can adapt to their own fit, if you like. So a bit similar to net zero in terms of the energy transition. It's typically an ambition, a goal, as opposed to like a hard and fast target. So we find that companies use this term as a guiding principle to really frame their waste reduction ambitions. And it's really important that also this is linked to your ESG commitments and your reporting commitments, that you're tracking progress towards this target year on year if it is a goal that you are going after. There is a loose industry, well, the industry definition that we have is from the Zero Waste International Alliance, and this says that zero waste is the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse and recovery of products, packaging and materials without burning and no discharge to land, water or air that threaten the environment. So if you are seeking to make strong commitments in this space, or you need a guiding structure, you could consider True Zero Waste certification. And that stands for Total Resource Use and Efficiency Certification. And it is a globally recognized standard to measure and improve zero waste in facilities and organizations. And it's overseen by the Green Building Certification Corporation, based out of the US, and ISS and Anthesis both have accredited True advisors and are working on sort of several certification projects with clients at the moment. So do reach out if that's something of interest. And then we just have some top tips here for increasing recycling. So as Neil's already touched on, waste baselining is really important to understand what your waste composition is. So not just how much waste you're producing by material, but really digging into identifying hotspots or problem materials. So, for example, finding out the quantity of recyclables in your general waste so that you can engage staff on improved segregation behaviours, or the quantity of single-use plastic items being used so that these can be cut out and alternatives identified. I've highlighted food waste here in terms of reduction as well, because food waste recycling is expensive because it requires specialist treatment via anaerobic digestion. We know, for example, hospitality businesses can cut waste costs by 20 to 50% if they're reducing food waste through methods such as portion control, menu redesign, donating surplus food, for example. And a top tip here is around supplier engagement. So really working with your supply chain and procurement to design out waste, procure better products, for example, switching to reusable packaging or eliminating hard to recycle materials so that they're not into your organisation from the outset. And then moving on to circularity. So again, engaging procurement teams is really important. So can they, for example, be looking at leasing products instead of buying outright? Can they engage with suppliers to see if they offer take-back schemes for packaging or products at end of life? And what options are there for reuse and refill? And then we find there's typically lots of opportunities in building interiors here. So looking at fixtures, fittings, furniture, either at new design or when refurbishments are taking place. So there's lots of secondary markets for these items, but also the opportunity to design in modularity, design for deconstruction, durability, etc., from a design perspective as well. Next slide, please, Michael. Thank you. So in terms of taking advantage of the circular economy, so really the business opportunity is created by adopting circular economy principles across the workplace and supply chain. Sort of the key message being that defining circularity goals can unlock long-term value by reducing material risks, cutting waste, and building greater resilience. And setting these goals provides a practical roadmap for sourcing operations and partnerships to really help you embed sustainable material use into the way you create and retain value. We've already touched on procurement and circular business models and the role they play in enabling the circular transition. So really focusing on procurement teams influencing the demand for sustainable products and prioritising durability, reuse, recycled content and take-back programmes. And at the same time, circular business models that really focus on keeping products and materials in use for longer throughout repair, reuse, remanufacturing and recycling. And I'll touch on some examples of circular business models in the case studies at the end. But these approaches combined can really create new revenue opportunities, improve resource efficiency, create stronger supply chain resilience, and support long-term commercial sustainability within your businesses. Next slide, please, Michael. Handing over to Neil for the first of our case studies.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So yeah, we're just going to take you through several case studies just around the sort of practicalities of projects that we've done for clients in the past. So first one for me was the work that we've been doing with NHS Trust. So a lot of this aligns with HTMO 701. There was a requirement for ISS to help trusts segregate better, especially within sort of clinical waste streams. So ISS used captured data post-COVID to understand the current baseline before launching a combination of new signage. We developed an online WasteWise training program and then engagement sessions with both ISS placemakers and NHS Trust teams. The result was a significant move towards moving waste out of the most expensive waste stream, which is high temperature incineration, creating a better segregation into offensive waste and saving massively on disposal costs. This also improved the recycling rate as the new signage avoided waste being sent down the incineration route. And the good news that for from our point of view was that ISS got recognised for this a couple of years ago at the NHS England Awards for Excellence. So yeah, a fabulous piece of work highlighting the importance of segregation and saving waste disposal costs. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you. So this is a case study where we worked with a global online retailer to conduct a waste baseline and audit across 11 sites globally. So this was part of their zero waste program. They wanted to do a deep dive into their waste composition. So we worked with the FM team at each of the site to segregate waste streams, identifying contamination in the recycling stream, recyclables in the general waste, and then weighing and categorizing specific waste streams. With a focus on single-use plastic items that could potentially be reduced or eliminated. And the data and insight provided showed that only 33% of recyclable items were actually being captured, so a huge amount of recyclable material was being wasted or lost within the general waste. So this led to the company launching a WasteWise campaign across all of their offices to engage staff on the new recycling scheme. New bins were introduced to encourage source separation as opposed to mixed recycling. And signage accompanied the awareness raising campaign as well. And also as a result of the campaign, 8 different single-use plastic items were eliminated or replaced with alternatives. These included shrink wrap, catering trays and serveware, which were all eliminated. Next slide, please, Michael. So this is an example of a circular business model project that we worked on with a US-based retailer who had set a goal of 100% of their own brand products to be designed for a circular future by 2040. So we researched and worked with them on a variety of avenues to help them meet this target. And we looked at designing 3 different circular business models that would be easy for customers to use, whilst enabling new sources of revenue and creating systems for closed loop recycling. And we focused on 3 product categories: electronic goods, toys, and apparel. And throughout this project, we also conducted a large competitor analysis piece to understand what peers were doing in this space, and then tested the circular product models we designed with customer focus groups to understand barriers to use, likes and dislikes, etc. And then we also conducted financial forecasting to examine the initial investment versus payback periods for the circular models. And the company is now moving forward to pilot phase with electronic goods and resell refurbished items and goods with a special warranty, providing leasing options for big ticket items such as washing machines and freezers. And I think that leads us to Neil and for you to wrap up.
It's actually me, Sarah, but that's absolutely fine.
Thanks, Michael.
Just say thank you both very much. I thought I'm in this fortunate position of, we've obviously walked through a few of these slides together on a couple occasions, and each time I learned something new. I've actually written down something about that Irish example you gave around the bottle return, and I actually have a question. If we get there, I'd like to ask it, but if not, then I'm certainly take it offline. But look, we do hope that that this webinar was useful. And that you do leave with a few key takeaways. I think if I could just highlight a few, I think regulation is obviously placing a very true cost on waste, and that cost is going to continue to rise. But we do feel that if you examine that cost in the right way, that's a great majority of that cost can be avoided. And I think also as a starting point, having a clear waste target to eliminate landfill use and incineration costs is really paramount. Also, a waste baseline and composition analysis, it can actually support real action. It will reduce costs, and it will actually start those first foundational steps toward a circular transition. And also, I think, and this just resonates with a conversation I had just this morning, is once you have a strategy in place, and so many times we build strategies and then we try to implement and it 6 months later, scratching your head, you're thinking, why didn't it succeed? It's a lot of that is down to the fact that maybe in tandem with it, in conjunction, you didn't have a communications campaign. A strong communications campaign, it doesn't always ensure success, but it certainly helps. So we'd always recommend that you have a nice, strong, robust communications campaign that supports your organization for any of these types of projects. Additionally, and the UK's, which was mentioned, the Circular Economy Growth Plan, it is actually truly driving some action. It's improving material use, it's eliminating carbon, and it's supporting that all-important element of behavior change. And if I can finally, and a shameless plug, is that as an integrated FM partner, we do believe that ISS, supported by Anthesis, are really ideally positioned to take some of your ambitions and turn it into real cost-effective action. Okay, what we will do is, we've got time, we're actually on good time, and we will have a little short Q&A and then let you get on with your day. But before we do that, just quickly, I just want to say that we will follow up after today's session with some information, some links, some guidance from everything that we've covered. But if you would like to dive a bit deeper into some of your own waste challenges or talk through your wider ambitions, we would love to chat with you. We are very lovely people. We love a conversation, and we would love to understand more about what you're trying to achieve. So please just reach out. And also, if feedback, if you have any sort of sustainability or environmental topics that gives you sleepless nights, of which there probably could be several, then do let us know. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what they are, and it actually could shape some of our future webinars. All right. Well, now just see if there's anything that come through. See anything in the Q&A? But I'm not going to let you get away with not having any questions at all. So if nothing comes through, I actually have one that I will ask. Is actually an event that I attended last week, and I thought it was really it was interesting because for me it resonated from the discussion that we're having today. If it's all right, I'll just ask you the question here, and I'm just going to put you both on the spot. So the question is they were essentially they were facing obviously a lot of these new compliance requirements, things like simpler recycling. But her challenge was that she believed that her recycling rates have plateaued, similar to what you mentioned, but then also she didn't necessarily feel confident that they have the right data or the right visibility on waste. And feels like they may actually be overspending on some of their disposal costs. And her question was where should we focus first, or where should she focus first to unlock better performance without disrupting that sort of day-to-day operations? I don't know who would like to tackle that question.
Neil, do you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, I can do. So the answer I would suggest is, and this is something that we have plenty of conversations around at the minute, is you have to start with that waste baseline survey to understand what's currently going on in your buildings, so that we can sort of plan, we can get visibility of what's actually going on in each of your buildings. For example, at the moment I've got one of my team over in Paris. I think I've seen him on this call, but he's over in Paris doing a composition analysis on a banking client's waste, and it's the only way we can really understand how we can make that progress. So going back to the things that I was highlighting on my earlier slides, is that if we know what's currently going into the waste streams, then we can sort of plan and manage it out. And I was on a call a couple of hours ago with a potential client that we're doing some work with from a tender point of view. And the one thing I was doing when I was trying to shape the solution was to look at the percentage of general waste, because it was like really high. So when we did that analysis, it was like 80% of their waste was going out as general. And for me, it's a huge opportunity, because unless that business does some work on that general waste, when that emissions trading scheme comes in, they're going to pay a lot more money for it. So yeah, to move to that circular economy or that zero waste approach is it's a must, unfortunately. So
Thanks, Neil. Sarah, did you want to touch upon that at all?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so from the material composition analysis as well, you can look at procurement actions. So actually understanding, how you can minimize single-use items, remove them entirely, or move to reusables, and you can get some really good insight from actually knowing what's coming into your building, and yeah, sourcing those alternatives essentially through more of a procurement exercise.
Thank you. I actually have a question that's just come in. How do you advise that sustainability teams within rigid public sector procurement processes deal with trying to align targets and goals across the wider organization?
So is this where you've got kind of multiple government departments, or is it just across kind of one portfolio of buildings? I kind of maybe need a bit more detail on that. I don't know. People aren't able to speak, are they, Michael?
No, unfortunately not. No. And Neil, did you want to touch on that?
so I'm just reading the question again.
Yeah, we can have a look in there.
I think from a procurement processes, I mean that procurement processes is just one of the things that you can do. I mean, obviously working with a lot of government teams at the minute, we try to align what we're trying to achieve through the sort of government greening commitments, and yeah, I suppose it's about trying to identify where the opportunities are and where we can challenge some of those procurement processes. If they're so rigid, then we might not be able to do that. But for me, it's just about identifying where the opportunities are and then just talking about it and planning it through, whether that's training, whether it's behavioural change, whether it's signage. There's some like small incremental improvements we can do rather than like keep going like huge changes. It's just it's small steps.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. I've got another question here. We've got a bit of time. And I think this really sort of highlights the need for, or the challenge of behavior change. It says, how best to try and shift employee behavior around improving waste segregation? We have developed clear guidance, signage, but we cannot control the hand that hovers around the bins at the point of disposal. How do we make them make the right and correct decision? Challenging, I know.
I can take this one if that's helpful. So we do hope that simpler recycling will help with this, because obviously we have that standardization across the UK in residential settings and within businesses. So people should get used to the same segregation system, both at home and at work, which should really kind of help make those decisions on where to put what. I'd also say, the ISS team, in terms of the placemakers on the ground, can be really helpful at helping with some of this messaging. So do kind of reach out to us about how we can help with campaigns around this. And also kind of taking it a bit further than just guidance and signage. So can you be doing, awareness days? Can you be doing some kind of gamification or, competitions between teams and floors, just trying to make it a bit more interactive to kind of highlight this issue?
Yeah, I think it really sort of depends on what resonates with that organization. In fact, I mean, there was a conversation that we were having this morning around that sort of gamification, around that competitive environment. But I suppose it depends on the organization. I don't know, Neil, if you wanted to touch any on that. I do have another question here, but I'm also conscious of time. It says, my organization sees quite a variation on recycling rates across our estate, often linked to different managing agents approach where we don't necessarily control the waste streams leaving the building. Does the emerging regulatory framework mean that this will start to become uniform?
In short, yes, it should. So even if you've got managing agents, they all should be segregating that waste, reporting on the waste. One of the things I will say is that where we have these types of setups within buildings, I mean, we're working from a waste innovation point of view with a couple of opportunities around using AI to track the waste, and also like a trackable waste solution to make sure that we're capturing the weights that are being produced where you are a tenant within a building. But in answer to the question, yes, it should be more uniformed.
Great. All right. I am going to stop there. I really appreciate the questions. I appreciate everybody, each one of you who have attended and remain with us. Thank you so much. Thank you again for joining, and we hope to see you at future webinars.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.